So, Anna, welcome back to the podcast. I can't believe it's been a year and you have a new book.
Yeah.
So let's just jump straight into it.
Yeah.
What have you been working on?
I had this crazy idea that I would write 2 books a year apart. And what's really cool about it is one is sort of like comes out from the other one. My new book is called Connectability, and it's a deep dive on something that was really crucial to the whole center of last year's book, Reregulated. And so this past year, it's been interesting because when you write a book, I mean, it's a lot of deep work and you think hard. And even though you thought you knew the topic, you do all this research and I would just create all these blocks of time for myself to think very deeply. And the really unexpected result of writing a book about connection is I got so much better at connecting with people. Like I thought I really had it down, but I learned something. I just kind of went next level on it in my own life, and I'm really enjoying that right now, spending the summer being with people.
2 books is wildly impressive.
Thanks.
And I do think that both the topics go hand in hand with each other. It's so funny. I just got sent this meme or like this little reel on Instagram by my friend's husband. And have you seen those? It's like this kind of like new age spiritual woo therapy where the person will kind of like move their hand over over like the patient, if you will, and their body is like convulsing and having like these really, and it's not to say that there's not something to the somatic release. I do believe in that, but a lot of this other stuff is very theatrical. And he sends this to me. So it's like, is this what you and Lena are doing like on your weekends? Like, absolutely not. And this I love that people are waking up to regulation, the importance of your nervous system. However, where there is opportunity, there are charlatans. And
Yeah.
then you see this. So I guess let's kind of step back to the first book for a second, just talk about regulation.
Yeah.
What are some practical tools that you do to regulate your nervous system?
I tell you what, half the battle of learning to re-regulate is knowing that it's a thing. Like
Hmm.
I spent 20 years, like a lot of my healing from trauma, I did not have the information that what was wrong underneath everything was that my nervous system was dysregulated. So
Hmm.
I was trying to apply all these different tools that people use, to feel better and be happier and get their lives together. But things didn't stick very well with me. And I can tell you why now. I just was so dysregulated. I had this underlying complex PTSD, and that really didn't get a name until like 12 years ago. And when I first learned the name for complex PTSD, I knew I had it. I went and talked to a therapist. They were like, "Yeah, that's what you have." And then the thing embedded in complex PTSD is this concept of dysregulation, that it's your nervous system. Now, when I was talking about this 8 years ago, when I first started my YouTube channel, it was this weird thing to say. It was like, gosh, she's obsessed with regulation. Now everybody's saying it. I'm so happy about that. I hear
Hmm.
them talk about it like on awards shows. But here's the thing. A lot of people, when they're talking about regulation, they're talking about one particular aspect of it, which is emotional dysregulation. And I don't blame people for focusing on that because that's the one that hurts your relationships.
Hmm.
Like just, there's other aspects of dysregulation where it's like altering your hormone balances or, your relationships aren't going to pick up on that in the short term.
Hmm.
And even you aren't going to be aware of it. Or how it affects your blood flow or your oxygenation of your blood or, how well your your T cells are functioning. None of that is anything you're going to be aware of. But emotional dysregulation is the one trauma symptom that's very loud, theatrical,
Hmm.
involves a lot of like tears, crying, threats on relationships and stuff that does real damage to our relationships and the opportunities, including our professional relationships. So, yeah.
So I would say, like, we all get out of regulation,
Hmm.
like, countless times throughout a day. I would say where I feel there is an issue and maybe like an abnormality is the inability to become regulated within like a reasonable amount of time, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
yes, like the dog barks and jolts you for a second and you get dysregulated. Your toddler has a tantrum and you get dysregulated,
Hmm.
but it's the ability to then re-regulate.
Yeah.
And then some people can't do that. So they're kind of existing in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn stage,
Yeah.
and they never get back to a regulated state, or if they do, like that is the rarity.
Yeah.
So let's, I guess, talk more about maybe like the typical kind of person.
Hmm.
Like you get into a state of dysregulation. Like, do you like breathing techniques? Do you do like mindset work, or is it like what is your protocol for having that like healthy regulation return?
Well, there's quick fixes and then there's like way of life fixes.
Mhm.
And the quick fix, they're both very important. They're both really important. And the quick fix is if you did one thing, I would say move your body in whatever way you possibly can. If you can
Mhm.
move your body outside, even better. If you can move your body outside with other people, even better. And if all those people are doing one movement together, like yoga or dance or martial arts, that's 4 times better. So that's just like a guide for the very quickest way. When we talk about like when we say regulation and dysregulation, a lot of people don't even know what we're talking about. Maybe instinctively, but what is it? But literally, the functions of your nervous system, which govern your vital signs and your ability to pay attention and your emotional processing of things, they're just a little out of whack or a lot
Mhm.
out of whack. And everybody has this sometimes. Everybody knows how to come back to regulation, but people who had trauma, sometimes it's harder. It happens more often. It goes deeper. It's harder to get out of. And so I think a common sensation that we have of, we can't feel all this when we're dysregulated. You can't feel everything, but what you can feel often is flustered, brain fogged, and overwhelmed. Those are like feelings that you have when you're dysregulated. So it helps to just sort of go, okay, I got you. The overwhelmed feeling that just like, ugh. I've described it like times of great dysregulation where my hair was in my eyes. I had a 2-year-old I was trying to get to stand up and he wouldn't. He was throwing himself on the floor of the subway train. I was leaning over and my backpack was coming over my head and,
Mm.
hitting me and, and, everything was just like falling all over. And just felt like I wanted to scream. That's extreme dysregulation. That's a terrible way to deal with a tantruming toddler, actually.
Mhm.
But that's not uncommon that a parent of a kid who's tantruming would feel very dysregulated. And it's a really challenging moment where you really want to know how to be the regulated one.
Mhm.
And that is how you're going to help the kid.
Yeah,
So,
because you help regulate their nervous system.
yeah,
It's for that first however many years your nervous system is kind of teaching theirs
yeah,
how to create homeostasis. So if you're
yeah.
constantly in a place where you're not dysregulated, like that's kind of how you're programming their nervous system.
Yeah. So they could come out feeling very disorganized. It's funny,
Mm.
there's words like disorganized. They're just helpful words to understand, like, what are we talking about? Where you can't remember, like, where am I supposed to be right now? I feel like I had an appointment or something and I can't remember what it is. Can't find your keys.
Mhm.
You can't remember to eat, or you can't remember that you already did and you keep eating. So, even like feeling hungry and full is part of your nervous system regulation. When you go into puberty or menopause is part of your nervous system regulation. A lot of things can fall out of whack when you fall asleep, when you're tired, and when you wake up. That's part of your nervous system regulation. So, what you can do in the short moment is just to just in the moment is to try to jolt yourself back into your body. And I used to always object to that phrase, in your body, because we are always in our body. We actually are. It's a metaphor for
Mhm.
for a feeling that you're not really aware of your hands and feet. And so little exercises that help you just remember, hello feet, like stomping them
Mhm.
left,
Mhm.
right, and being like, there's my feet. Okay, I'm feeling the dimensions of my body towards the south, and then
Grounding,
hands.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, just like coming back and putting yourself back into awareness of your full body. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. And I know some people do it with breathing. When I'm dysregulated, my thoughts are going so mad that I need more like actions than quiet things.
Mhm.
And actions are a little easier for me to grab onto and do
Mhm.
versus like I'm going to sit here and like have an empty mind. That's almost impossible for me and a lot of people when we're dysregulated. And one aspect of dysregulation is that when you're I take online courses, I read books. I'm not a therapist or a brain scientist, so I just go by, I don't know, can I feel a difference? But I always felt like when I'm dysregulated, my head feels like a bag of cats. I just like there's just so much going on and I can't really like remember what's the top priority to be thinking about right now. I think that's how a lot of people would describe ADHD, but it's not necessarily the same thing. Some people
Mhm.
think that they are cross-diagnosed incorrectly or something, maybe. But in any case, if your thoughts are all over the place and feelings are intruding on it, and it's very hard to stay focused, and it feels like a bag of cats, then any intervention to help get the crowded noise out of there. So what's the noise? I found out, like, it's not my imagination. People who were traumatized as kids, that it can leave a sort of a, let's call it an injury that makes it very difficult to process thoughts and feelings. And process in this context means to take it from an experience that gives you adrenaline and causes your heart to race and cortisol, and then that transition that happens to an experience where it's now just a memory. Your whole body doesn't activate over it. You're just like, oh yeah, that was a rough day. But it's not, your body isn't freaking out as if it's still happening. So that's a
Mhm.
lot what PTSD is it's the processing is not happening very well. And so your body's reacting as if the trauma is happening again and again and again, sometimes even when you're not thinking about it. Something unconsciously triggers that process. And so healing involves whatever it takes to stop going into this adrenal overload every time a little trigger happens, and to have memories of what it is, like that's what we want, memories but not activated things. So that's processing. That is hard to do when you have PTSD or CPTSD. It slows it down. So anything that assists us to take stuff that's bouncing around our minds and put it down, just put it down. You can remember what it is. Let's
Mhm.
just like clear a little space here. Let's get the dirty dishes off the table, and sit down and have something new. And
Mhm.
that's kind of how what healing is like. And that's for the lifestyle. It helps to have exercise, it helps to have sleep, it helps to have good nutrition and all those things we're supposed to do, but struggle to do because we're dysregulated. It's very hard to stick to plans like that. So the thing that saved me was writing. It's a specific writing technique, and different people use some different techniques. I love mine because it's not about writing everything. It's not about venting. It's a specific. The intention is to release it or to ask for it to be removed for people who are inclined toward a higher power, and to write down just the fearful thoughts and the resentful thoughts, and
Mm.
but only with the spirit of like, this is kind of what I got bouncing around in my head. I would like, please take this off my mind. And a lot of what we've been trained to do, whenever we're depressed or seeking professional help or working on trauma, a lot of what we get trained to do is to focus on the bad things, and that's not always going to be the most helpful thing when you're dysregulated. There's a time for that, but
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I agree. It's kind of like what I look at it, you have meditation, which is you want to try to clear your
Mhm.
thoughts, right? As much as, and it's not like it's more of a passive exercise. So here's a thought, okay, observe it, let it go. And a lot of people are getting into meditation, but we're not getting into like the full story of the emotions, which is to me like I notice that more on a day-to-day basis, like if I haven't cleared my emotional junk. So if you look at it the same way that you would do in meditation, every experience, every feeling that you have throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year, if it's not felt and processed, it's getting stored. So now it's like an email account that's just got like 2,500 little pings and you haven't done anything. And I think a lot of people will be dismissive about it because we don't have the science to necessarily say like this is exactly what it's doing. So it
Mhm.
still kind of gets categorized as like a little bit woo woo.
Mhm.
But there is something to that, like that old wisdom, which is when you say like the weight of the world on your shoulders, or you have a heartbreak, like all of these things that we've kind of described
Mhm.
exist for a reason, because like that energy is getting stuck or that feeling is
Yeah.
getting stuck. So if you're not processing it, you're going
Yeah.
to get sick. It's going to affect your telomeres. Like we know that it does have like some kind of relationship, and just because it's not like a beautiful line from one dot to the other, I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss it. So one of the exercises I've done, and I wish, like I need to like set a calendar, like maybe once a week, like a reminder to do it, because when I remember and I do it, I feel so much better. And it's this process of going through all of the feelings. And I don't know if you know who Mama Gina is. She
Mm-mm.
wrote this book called Pussy. And it's I know. It's supposed to be evocative in that way, but it's kind of like women reclaiming like their femininity and sensuality and that kind of a thing. But she has this process where you go through the major emotions. So first you go through, I think she has you go through anger first. So you put on like a playlist that makes you feel angry, and like you punch a pillow and you shout and you do whatever you do to like get all of that out. And then you move into sadness, and then you end with like sensuality essentially. So it's kind of like this full I guess like evolution of all of your feelings, and then by the end of it like you just feel more grounded, more in your body, more centered. And for me it just makes me a better parent, a better partner. Like, just I don't know how to, it's like I clicked like the factory reset essentially after I
Mm.
take the time to do something like that. And you don't have to do all of that, but it's just like sit with your feelings, process them, and I promise you're going to feel like a different person after you do the exercise.
Well, I mean, it sounds really great to get that result. I would say the thing about a person like me is that would be totally overwhelming. that would, trying to, yeah. The difference is, I guess, the thing that I had to admit about myself is the level of dysregulation is so great that I can't always participate in what's healthy and wonderful for everybody else.
Mm.
And I have to go at a slower pace. Anything that involves talking about it or people sort of saying, here, try to feel this way, would be instantly dysregulating for me. So um, a lot of what has helped me get that happy state all the same, though, is the release, is by naming it and releasing it. And I think for me, the writing ended up being a very like non-triggering way to do that. Like even
Mhm.
the title of the book, like that's a trigger for me. I have all this like stuff that happens, so that's a trigger for me. So I'm like, oh, I feel guarded with people who are going to talk like that. And
Mhm.
growing up with hippies and nudity and public sex and all that stuff, it's like it's actually a trigger. And I'm not trying to. I don't want to have triggers forever, but I sort of like I pace myself. I'm like, all right, well, what would
Mhm.
be good? So I would just sort of put out there like you can face all the same things um, with allowing them to come up. Like it's the percolation, the natural percolation. And so the technique that I teach, it's very basic, and a lot of people use it in conjunction with other things, such as what you're describing, or therapy, or whatever. But it's at a different time. And it's a way to be able to just name, like you sit there and you're just like, whatever it is that's distressing me, I name it, I put it on paper, I ask for it to be removed. And then the meditation I teach, you don't have to clear your mind. You don't have to observe your thoughts or breath or anything like that. That would be too much for a dysregulated mind. You can't, it's just like your mind is just like off just like that. So all you have to do is rest. And what's amazing is how far along you can get just from naming it and resting. Just name and in writing, there's a different brain pathway for talking about things and writing. And so I used to feel just completely left out because people would have this delightful experience like you're describing. And now I can hear that and be like, that sounds great. That sounds really fun to just be emotionally like when you said factory reset, like, oh, that sounds delicious to me. A factory reset sounds good. I want that. And then I try to be mindful with myself. Like I can't always go straight to that. I have to like deal with the fact that there's this glitching going on in my mind. And I never had a word for that. So I used to go try everything that other people enjoyed. And sometimes I would get quite upset. I remember I did this thing. Oh, this is so long ago. Talk about woo woo though. It was called rebirthing. Did you ever hear of that? This is
Mm-mm.
like when I was in college. And a friend of mine was learning how to be a practitioner, and I volunteered to be to receive it. And you do some serious hyperventilating, like Wim Hof breathing, to get into some sort of altered state where the technique says you would re-experience your birth. That's not what happened to me. I just completely freaked out. All my muscles locked up in
Oh,
tetany.
holotropic breathing?
Yeah, and I just like
Mhm.
completely freaked out, and I felt so unsafe, and I was just with a bunch of students and I didn't know what was happening, and it was like
Mhm.
terrible. It was like a terrible experience. And so I got into this very weird dynamic with what are you supposed to do about this? And I got very like secret, like something's wrong with me, but I can't benefit from what everybody else does. And
Mm.
I got that from talk therapy then. But now we know like so dysregulation is between me and easy access to like what other people do to resolve problems and feel happy and feel healthy.
Yeah, I
And
think that's one of the issues with these things kinda just blankly being prescribed to
yeah,
everyone at mass, and you're like, "This
yeah,
is good for high," like, we focus so much on high performers, high achievers, how do you, like, get your edge, right? But for so many people, especially a lot of
yeah,
women, we're already living there, so what we actually need to be
yeah,
doing is, like, downshifting, we don't need to be upregulating, so when you're doing something like holotropic breathing, that could be great. It tends to be better for men in my experience, but, like, the
hmm,
lobster hands, like, that's
hmm,
part of it, right? Because all of
uh-huh,
the, like, the blood it's like a vasoconstrictor, I think, with how you're breathing,
uh-huh,
but it gets you to this altered state, but what it's also doing is making you dysregulated, like, that's the whole point. So if you
yeah,
already have a nervous system that's on overdrive or you have someone that, like, really should be practicing surrender, letting go,
yeah,
resting. Resting is really hard for a lot of people, like,
yeah,
you're doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing. So you have to be able to, like, look at yourself individually and be like, "What does my body need?" Not like, "Oh,
yeah.
this is for everybody."
Yeah, but it's so hard to know. We're like in the wild west of like, what do you do about trauma? People talk about 100 different things. And so that's where I think one of the most important things a person can do to equip themselves to heal is to recover their own agency and to have it be okay to go, yeah, I don't feel very comfortable when I do this. It doesn't
Yes.
or I meditate and I dissociate, some people say. Just stuff like that. It just totally needs to be okay. It's like that's fine. There's no pressure. And that is and I think that's one of the great things that's happening kind of in personal development and mental health now is a lot more recognition of difference in because when I was younger, even like 15 years ago, it was just assumed like, I think I told you the story when we talked before, but I was attacked on the street. The thing that really brought my PTSD, like exploded it. I was compartmentalizing it pretty well. I didn't even know that I had it, but I got attacked on the street and I was beaten unconscious and hurt really badly. And I ended up with PTSD and it couldn't be diagnosed because it just wasn't understood in 1994 that you don't have to be a combat veteran to have it. And my
Mhm.
nervous system was a mess. I couldn't process anything. But what was understood at that time is you need to talk about it. You need to talk about it maybe every day to somebody. And that was like the worst advice.
'Cause
It
you're
was,
reliving it every time.
oh
That's what I
gosh.
don't understand about people that are so gung ho on talk therapy. I'm like,
Yeah.
at some point, you gotta get off the couch, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not you're doing damage, like, severe damage, and it's the same with any healing
Yeah.
modality, truly. If you don't get off the treadmill or if you don't hang up the phone, right, like, you're in a perpetual state of, like, of not being healed, not being whole, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's revisiting the
It's
wound.
another stuckness.
Mhm.
And so it was really hard for me. And that was what's been so great about this current era is there's a lot more permission to be like, that doesn't work for me. You know what works for me. And I love that. That's like life-saving actually, to not have to feel like I'm just so broken. I really am the broken girl, if therapy can't even help me.
Mhm.
Whoever even heard of that? you know,
No,
what's wrong with
totally.
me? Yeah. So now it's like, okay, it's okay. And what's cool is the Royal College of Psychiatry uses some of my videos now to teach what it's like to have complex PTSD. And I'm like, that is so fulfilling to me that like the professionals are like, okay, we are interested, even if we don't have what you have. A lot of the professionals do have what I have. And that's also comforting to me. I like to be friends with and work with people who know what it's like to have trauma.
Mhm. Yeah, because there's
Yeah.
something for lived experience, and to have the antidote of, like, what like you were saying, like, I'm not a brain surgeon or anything, I just know if it works for my body. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really powerful
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. And is my life getting happier? And I think this is one of the measurements of whether your life is going well is what's happening with your connection to people. Because
Mhm.
I think a lot of us, when we're first healing, we need to be a little bit like alone. We pull away, perhaps, um, and that's good. It's natural to need a little bit of solitude and to focus on yourself. But what happens is so many of us have used isolation unconsciously to avoid the stress and dysregulation of being around people.
Mhm.
And I think hardly anybody got through the pandemic without getting more sensitive to that. Like, people, this is stressful. They have opinions. They have an
Mhm.
agenda. They're always trying to make you go somewhere. They contradict you. They interrupt you. They don't like you. It's just it's a lot of triggers. And, and so I think that was just one of the crucibles. The pandemic was a crucible for the way that we connect to other people and what we actually want out of that. And you probably heard this from people too. I mean, maybe a third of the people who follow me were just like, "Yay, lockdown! We wish it would go on forever." That was fun for them. But I'm not one of those people. A little bit, but you can only. I just think we have these interpersonal wounds. That's what causes complex PTSD is relational trauma. It's about how you were treated or neglected, and to heal it is going to require practice with people. And so if there's no people around, you can only get so far. But I'm all for a little healthy solitude. It's great for self-reflecting.
No, I
It,
agree. I think that in small doses,
yeah,
you should be okay by yourself. A lot of people are not okay by themselves. I do think it's taken to its extreme and it's not beneficial when people are like, I'm just going to I'm going to take, 2 years off of relationships and find
exactly.
myself and heal my, it's like, that's not how the world works. Like you find yourself in relationship dynamics. Like
Yeah,
that's how it's like the whole iron sharpens iron kind of a
yeah,
thing. So there's again, you nailed it when you said there's only so much you can do by yourself.
yeah.
Um, why do you think it is that when it comes to connection and it comes to relationships that we find the worst thing for us sometimes? So attachment style is a huge thing that people are talking about right now.
Yeah,
I think it also ties into like somatic nervous systems patterns. You will have someone who is anxious and has a lot of needs, and you have someone who's avoidant and needs a lot of space, and they tend to find each other instead of just saying, why don't I find like attracts like.
yeah.
I have a lot of needs, you have a lot of needs, we can meet each other's needs. I like a lot of space, you like a lot of space, we can give each other space. But no, 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 no.
It
Most
sounds
people
good.
find the opposite and they're like,
Yeah,
let's try to do this and see what happens.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. My own marriage is a little like that, and we're still together after all these years because we found a way to meet in the middle. But there was some bumpy road stuff in the early years there of how to, where even is the middle? Who gets to
Mhm.
call where the middle is? And yeah, my husband, he's somebody who pays great attention, and sometimes he gets very into whatever he's doing, and he can get like really obsessed on a project for 2 weeks, and the level of attention he gives goes down. And even calling it attention just makes it sound like so dumb, but it's not dumb. There's just like when he's like lost in a project he's obsessed on, I can't really get through to him. He'll nod, but he doesn't remember what I just said. And then later he'll be like, "What's this? Why are there people walking into the house tonight?" It's like, "Remember, because we're having a dinner party and we invited them." and, and it
Oh my
actually makes
goodness.
me very irritated and makes me feel abandoned when he does that. But from the outside, you can kind of hear how it happens. But that's just like how he rolls. I tend to think, I think it's actually been very good for me to be with somebody who's not like equally focused on like, how do we feel? Why don't we talk about it? Hold on, I need something. That I've had to kind of like relax that a little bit, which is actually a good direction for me personally, to just learn how to just say, okay, he's not really available right now for a chit chat about this. I'm going to go make my breakfast and have that be okay. And that's actually been a great path of personal development. But trauma and relationships, I mean, they just do. Getting abuse and neglect have a terrible effect on relationships, and everybody sort of knows that. And gradually we're finding out scientifically, like, what are the organic reasons for that. It's not all psychological, but it's in doing my work preparing the book Connectability, I was trying to ask, like, why do we do this? Because here's what I want to put on the table here. Some people are avoidant. They're just like, they like being avoidant. That's what feels good to them. But some of us are unconsciously avoidant. I call it covert avoidance. And we feel really lonely, and we don't want it to be like that. And we don't understand, like, why am I like, nothing is really turning into a deep friendship, or I never feel like with my partner, like we're really hearing each other. Everything always feels like there's this little distance or a membrane between us. Or trying to join a group and you feel like, I don't know, everybody else belongs here, but just not me. And that's a really common and normal feeling for people who had trauma. And I really look deeply into the why of it, because it's not just psychological. I mean, for one thing, if you were neglected in your early development, your brain and nervous system develop differently. And
Mhm.
part of that like deep interaction of mama and baby is meant for brain development, actually
Mhm.
brain development of both.
Mhm.
Both individuals develop as a result of that intense relationship. And I loved that time in my own life. It was like really happy and healing. I loved that time in my own life. But it because I was a working mom, I was a single mom. My marriage with their dad ended quite early when they were little, and I was gone all the time. There was just, I don't know. It's very hard. It's very hard to be with them all the time, and they would be in like daycare. And if I could change that, I would love to change it. I would have loved to have had a little time to myself, but that was a really hard thing for all of us to be separate. And so learning subsequently about the importance of that connection growing up. I mean, my kids have turned out beautifully, but but I did not know back then. I didn't know back then how deep and important it was. And I think because my mom, she worked, but she I think she was a very ambivalent mother. I don't think she totally wanted all of us. Maybe the fourth kid she wanted, but not the rest of us. And she
Mm.
she was an alcoholic, and she would sometimes get drunk and say so. And I didn't take it personally, but gosh, we were neglected. She would just take off sometimes for a
Mhm.
month with some guy, and we never knew if she was coming back, and somebody would turn up to watch over us. But it was very rocky, and there was a lot of drama and violence, and she just didn't know us very well, I would say. She could never remember where I went to college or what I studied. She didn't help me pay for it, which it's just understandable. We were poor, but the part where she just didn't know, I was really on my own with all that stuff. She also did she, she worked for the school district, but she forgot to tell me that you have to apply to college. Like, I didn't know. And I tried to go to college and I walked into the administration office, and they were like, "Did you apply?" And I was like, "No. When do you do that?" And they were like, "A year ago." I didn't
Mm.
know. And I'm laughing now, but I just had so many disadvantages without that. And so there were a lot of ways that I felt different from other kids, really legitimately. I didn't want to invite them home because I didn't know what we were going to encounter when we were there. The house was usually like very messy, kind of hoarder, filthy. And my mom could walk in anytime just drunk and inappropriate. And so I ended up only hanging out with other people who were from pretty messed up families who weren't phased by that. That's never a conscious choice I made. But later, when I was like, well, I went to a high school reunion. I didn't even go to one until I was nearly 40. And I caught up with my friends from junior high, and we found out that all of us had a like addicted or alcoholic parent, and or a parent who had died. And like we all had these pretty serious like measures of trauma going on, and like no wonder we felt safe with each other. And then for like a couple days we felt like besties, and then after that it turned out we didn't have that much in common after all, cuz now we're just ourselves. We're not so defined by the household we grew up in, thank goodness. But that's that there were just, I just think a lot of people have that the way they grew up. My parents were hippies. Other people have parents who were very religious, or they were from another country, or they were super strict, or they were bullies, whatever it was. Or they were in like some sort of like guru cult, or just something that made the kids life very different from other kids. Like when you're in junior high, you like to be like all the other kids.
Mhm.
And then we have our own reasons, so a kid could just be like, I'm going through a depression and I can't tell anyone, or a kid who just knows they're gay and can't tell anyone, and feeling like, oh, I'm different. If anybody knows what I'm like, I'm going to get rejected, which was often true. Kids are very mean to each other about
Yeah.
differences. And so there's like real stuff going on. And just like in your environment, there's stuff going on in the development of your nervous system. And then there's like, if if your parents were so good at dealing with people, you probably wouldn't have complex PTSD. Parents who allow abuse and neglect to happen, or who perpetrate it, usually don't have very good relationships with the outside world, and so they're not modeling to you how to deal with like life's little difficult moments. When you like, what do you do when you're angry? You scream, or you
Mhm.
totally silence yourself. You learn these very extreme habits, but you don't learn a good way to tell people, hey, I need to talk to you about something. This is a little awkward, but there was something you said the other day that made me uncomfortable. Like, that's like PhD level connectability up there. If
Mhm.
you grew up in a dysfunctional family, you just didn't learn that. So people like me, we learn from TV, we learn from teachers, kids, parents. You sort of try to put it together. I literally had to teach myself how to use silverware, a fork and a knife. That's
Oh
just
my
not something we
gosh.
did. We didn't have meals served. It was sort of like, serve yourself. And if you're a kid, it's just like,
It's so heartbreaking.
it's sad that happened. And I feel like the luckiest kid in my family because my adaptation was to just like figure it out and go recruit silent partners, like friends' moms. I've later found out I had a couple of friends and friends' mom who I could talk to in adulthood. I'm like, did you know what was going on? And they were like, yeah, we know. And we're really sorry. Like in those days, you didn't call CPS on
Mhm.
this, and maybe we should have. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I didn't want to be taken away, but I got to come to your house when I needed you. And that's like all the difference.
Yeah, I had a couple surrogate moms as
Yeah.
well in that
Yeah.
sense. So, like, we have a lot of similarities
Wow.
in our childhood. Like my mom would take off not for months at a time, but for like weeks at a time. It's like and again, like there was no regulation on her end. There's a lot of stuff she was dealing with. And you nailed it when you said like if you're not getting healthy relationships modeled to you,
Mhm.
you have to figure out how to outsource that. So what do you do? Like you look at some movies or you look at
Yeah.
maybe some other, friends, parents and things like that and it's not done intentionally. So then that sets you up for a potential failure when you do look out, when you start looking for a romantic partner or you start trying to make deeper connections with people because um a lot of it's like fantasy, right? Like if you're watching like a Disney movie and you're like, this is
Right.
what love is, you're gonna be very disappointed. Or if you're watching like The Notebook, also very disappointed because that's not a healthy relationship either. And I feel like I wish I knew about this work when I was younger, like before I started dating, before I became a parent, because all of these things test you so intensely that I get when the parent will like start screaming or be shut down or right like just like not do a great job or why people get divorced because like all of these things are really fucking hard. They're
Yeah.
hard if you're regulated and if you're dysregulated like the smallest thing add like sleep deprivation. My first baby was a NICU baby, so like you want to talk
Oh,
about stress like the most stress, right? And then after that, they just like send you home and like, here you go. And they're like, there's no support, there's no information. And now I don't even know, but my body is stuck in fight or flight because I don't know if my baby's gonna live. So
yeah.
all of these things can be wildly taxing on like yourself and the baby and the marriage and all of the things.
Yeah.
And um it doesn't help that like so much of like the I guess like thought leaders if you will online or all of like these pseudo gurus and I feel like a lot of them do more damage I like you can heal yourself. You have everything you need to heal yourself within your own body, within your own mind and you can get into trouble if you outsource everything and you're constantly
Yeah.
outsourcing everything or
Yeah.
looking for a drug or a plant or someone to tell you what to do. Like I like to
Or a
me I
life
have
hack.
such an aversion to that just from my personal story.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I went to the 12-step program for families of alcoholics for 25 years. And that was a big piece of my education on like how the world works. I learned a lot about people who manage to change their lives and people who get stuck. And
Mhm.
it was like a case study. What do the people who change their lives do? And what do the people who get stuck do? And and that was probably the best, that and doing comedy. Those is like, if I had to say where did I learn the most about how to live life, those two things. But the people who change their life, they often have worse problems to begin with that make it necessary to like really
Mhm.
really try, and they're willing to face honestly like what they have agency over. In 12 step there's that serenity prayer,
Mhm.
the difference between things I can change and things that I can't. And the things that you can change are the ones where you have any power at all. And sometimes I feel like um, therapy culture and self-help culture and all of it, they act like you can change everything. And I
You just have to
think
manifest harder, right?
you have
Just
to
manifest
manifest, and
harder.
you also have to make your boyfriend da, da, da. It's like, oh, just try to make anybody do anything. And so that's sometimes a lot of people who come to my channel have been watching a lot of videos about narcissism. We all sort of have a gentle laugh about it, because it's like you can spend a lot of your time focusing on how narcissistic other people are, and it ultimately can become a way not to look at yourself and just be like, what am I doing with these people anyway? What why am I surrounded with these people, and what can I do about that? Like, that's what you can do something about. You can't make somebody stop being a narcissist.
No, no, that's a forever thing.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I believe too, and this is actually a controversial thing to say, but I believe you can heal, that you have what you need to heal. And it's wise and sensible and sane to ask for wise counsel sometimes. But I argue with the model that all healing has to come through this one person you see once a week for 50 minutes. That's not really realistic, no matter how
Mhm.
good they are.
Mhm.
That you need something every day as a guidepost. You need a set of principles, like, when in doubt, should I
Mhm.
be kind or should I yell? Or when in doubt, should I hurry a decision or slow down? And some principles like that to help you access your best knowledge. And honestly, I also, a lot of where I learned how to live life was reading, religion, philosophy. Like, people, we didn't just make up how to live life in the last century.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to glorify the past, like, oh, they really knew how to do it then, but they knew a lot. They had the mistakes of their time, just like we have mistakes of our time. But there's some basic truths,
Mhm.
like to really take your time getting into a romantic relationship. And I think in our time, like, because of the advent of birth control, you could just ignore that one if you wanted to. But that wouldn't be in your best interest. That would rarely be in your best interest to just, like, okay, it doesn't matter now. And that's, for traumatized people, that's one of my pieces of advice. Like, going slow in relationships with, you brought up insecure attachment, but there it is. Insecure attachment will just, like, lock you down with somebody you didn't even really choose. Maybe you felt
Mhm.
an attraction. Now you're locked down. Abandonment wounds almost, I mean, attachment, anxious attachment almost always comes with an abandonment wound that makes it so you rush in fast and you won't leave. And that is a waste of my life, my friends, that you do not want to have rushed in and not leave in the wrong fit. And
So
that
how
is
do
how
you
we pass it
know
on.
yeah, how do you know if you're operating from that attachment wound or like a place of dysregulation versus that it's a good person for you?
It really, to discern if somebody is a good person for you, I think takes a minimum of 18 months to 2 years.
Oh, wow,
And,
really?
well, you certainly shouldn't decide to marry somebody in that window. I mean, you really are, what you're waiting to see. Like, if you're not good at seeing red flags, you need some time for this. You need to start seeing, like, how does this person act on a road trip? How do they act when it's the holidays and something really disappointing and stressful happened? How do they
Mhm.
treat the people in the airline line, when there's a big delay? How do they treat the dog when the leash wraps around their ankles? How do they, you want to just, like, experience people, and you want to experience yourself and how you work out these problems together and the talking. So if you have attachment wounds, the thing is, and especially if you're a woman, once you have sex, your attachment just, it's shot forward. It's just,
Mhm.
there's just involuntary aspects of that have now got you very locked in. And whatever, parent stuff, unhealed wounds of not being loved enough, you're going to have a hard time, keeping that from interfering with the natural evolution of the relationship. And early in the relationship, especially, like, we are who we are. We're always our partners and ourselves. We're always going to be flawed and have vulnerabilities, and we're going to need people who love us as we are. But in that early phase of the relationship, so that you don't end up just completely attached to somebody who doesn't treat you well, who doesn't really care about you, who's not really available for you, which is what happens so much to us.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
just get in and we don't know how it happened. And I live and learn on this one. Going slowly, this was my mantra. When I made a decision that I could not let this happen ever again. I already had my kids. My first marriage had ended. It could never happen again. I could not bring in some loser
Mhm.
and or somebody who was going to be unkind to them in any way. And I made a decision that I would have to let information come to me, not go questing and be like, hey, are you free? Are we going to get together this week? I haven't heard from you. You didn't text. Like, if somebody's not texting you, let information come to you. That's information. You're letting it come to you. You're like, someone who doesn't text, not a good sign.
Yeah,
Let's see how this
I don't
unfolds.
get that with a lot of the younger girls. It's like it's this anxiety and they turn into a detective and they're like, "Where is he? What's he doing? I put this Apple tag in his car and I'm going to catch
Oh
him." And it's like,
boy.
what are you trying to salvage with that dude? If he's
Yeah.
doing all of those things, like very much like the whole Mel Robbins, let him
Yes.
and go find someone that wants to treat you right. Like that should not be where you are exerting effort in the relationship. Like for sure the relationships require effort, but not to be respected, not to be like to treat the relationship properly or treat you properly. Like it
Yeah.
shouldn't be hard to love someone the right way,
Yeah.
right? Other things, yes, things come up, people get sick, bills, kids, whatever. Like life will give you plenty of obstacles, but like those things shouldn't be hard.
No, and if you're arguing about it all the time, that puts it in a new category. If it's something you're fighting for, fighting to be loved, what does that remind you of? It's like, isn't that where you started? And so that's, I've probably told you my word crap fit. I just love that word crap fit. You fit yourself to crap because you got good at it as a kid. You just learned you had to make do with less,
Yep.
less attention, less awareness from your parents, less
Mhm.
safety. So you're like, no, I'm good. I can do with 50% safety. That's all right. Criticism below the belt, no problem. I know how to do this. and then,
Mhm. Right,
and
like
then and then we can just put up with way too much and not know how we got there.
yeah, and way too little at the same time as well, and it's again, I have like such a bone to pick with like this new age spirituality stuff that I see because it's like an overcorrection and anything taken to its extreme can be it is a problem. And one of the things that gets perpetuated a lot is this idea that you are whole by yourself and you don't need anyone else and you shouldn't seek validation and you shouldn't seek love and you like right like you should be able to do fulfill every one of your needs on your own. That's bullshit.
Yep.
That's not real. Your need to be needed is valid. Your need to be loved is valid. Your need to be seen is valid, right? There's this quote that the guy that I'm seeing says, and I think it's from a show he was watching or a book, and it's nothing in nature exists alone. And I was like, because I would talk to him about this subject because I'm like, am I wrong for these? It's like nothing exists in nature alone. Everything has a counterpart. So if someone's telling you that you are supposed to fulfill all these needs, like that's garbage. That's not why we're here. Like we're here for connection, right? And to have our lives witnessed.
Hmm.
And how lonely, right? Just like one person can't fulfill all of your needs, you can't fulfill all your own needs as well. So it's a
Yeah.
balance.
I'll tell you my theory about that. I grew up in Northern California, and when the new age thing was at its peak with it unchecked, very culty, and almost always like anything that got popular ended up somehow with the leader having sex with a lot of the young women. And always with that rhetoric. Hey, your expectations of being monogamous or being special to me, that's just your old head trip, from some bad thing. And now you're free. It was like a manipulation. It was deep gaslighting that made it possible to have casual sex with women. That's what I think it was.
Hmm.
And that a lot of us women, punished ourselves, like tried to go along with it until we couldn't, until there was some breakdown. I was definitely from the generation where I was like brainwashed to believe like, no, you're not supposed to expect commitment. You're not supposed to expect monogamy. You're not supposed to expect to feel special to somebody. You should be friends with them after breaking up. You should like their new girlfriend and come along to the movies with them and be cool about it. And it was just like this massive exercise in like denying my whole self. And
Mm.
later when I was healing, I had to like recover that. I had to recover my own like aversion to being a third wheel, my own aversion like to my mom being a hippie. She used to just be like, I tell this, we were at the Santa Cruz Beach and Boardwalk. They have this wavy slide. They used to, but when I was a kid, it was very exciting for kids. But we had been swimming in the beach and they said no wet bathing suits on the slide. You get a burlap sack and you could go down really fast on the slide. And she said, well, just take your bathing suit off. And I was like, no, mom, no, I was 6. She's like, you don't have anything for people to see. Just take it off. And it probably wasn't even allowed anyway, but who knows? California then. But I had this natural modesty. And I used to think that I always had to get naked when everybody got naked at a hot spring or a hot tub or something. But I never liked it. I told you about that. Like that book name was a trigger to me. Like the way that people were so untrustworthy with this like rhetoric, this dogma about like any sense of I'm not comfortable with this sex thing going on. Any of that was pathologized.
Mhm.
And you were told you had to get rid of it. And boy, the damage that was done to the women of my generation is just like incalculable. And many of them have come back out of it. And some people, I don't know. It ended up being this big negativity. And I think what happens is that programming of like, I don't need anybody. And I'm just a, that's for Disney movies, that dream that you finally your true love is going to show up in your life. It's not just for Disney movies. It's very natural, and it's how families are formed, and it's okay. It's okay to be that way. So it was a very major turnaround in my life when I made that decision and could begin to have authentic relationships where I didn't think I had to completely mask my true nature, which was possessive, jealous, very emotional, because I wanted a monogamous relationship. And so, but then what it turned into is a cynicism. It turned into this like massive divorce rate and cynicism and loneliness. And so I'm not surprised right now that a lot of people, that there's a very low rate of getting married and having babies and all that. I think we're all sort of wondering like what just happened. And it was probably a lot of things. But part of it is this like false denigration of love and commitment and partnership. And when I'm coaching women who have been hurt in this way and who want to change their lives in order to have a happy, deep, fulfilling mutual relationship, the first thing we have to talk about is like, what do you really want? And almost never have I met a woman at the beginning of the process who can say openly like, well, I want to get married. And they'll come up with like this half-baked language. I want a life partner. I'll be like, so just sometimes or short term or what? Like I just try to get them to be specific. They go, no, well, for my whole life, no, monogamous, no. And then do you split money? Do you live separately? No, we live together, we share money. I'm like, so like marriage? And they're like, well, it's like that's become too much to ask for.
Mhm.
And that's really sad. And for myself, I finally got honest, and I wouldn't date anybody. I would just be like, it was just like front and center. Hi, I'm a single mom. I'm not going to date anybody who's not open to getting married. I'm not going to date anybody who has a problem with drugs or alcohol. I'm not going to date anybody who's entangled with his ex. I'm not going to, and I just
Mhm.
made a couple of decisions, and it was like no time at all before I met my husband.
Mhm. Yeah, you
But
have to be clear about what you want and what you
you
don't
have to
want.
be clear, and it's
Mhm.
there. It's not like it's lacking, but
Mhm.
it's just like you've cut yourself off from it.
I think it's a lot of trying to, like, protect your heart, right? When you see these women that are saying, because I think the non-monogamy thing is getting really popular again,
Yeah.
and I think when especially with these younger, more impressionable girls, it's like it's a feeling of, like, inadequacy, that I don't deserve all of that love or all of the attention or to be completely devoted to, so it's that can be dispersed, and love is abundant, right? Like, these things that you say that sound good and they sound like, "Oh, that's a higher level of consciousness." Like, yes, love is abundant. Well, yes and no, right? Like, yes and no. Like, time is not abundant, and, your ability to focus on everyone, like, there's going to be a limit to all of these things. And then what happens when you have kids, and like, there's just like there's a lot of complexities that are not sexy to talk about, but you see like all of the hot sex and like the hot people, and like, oh, you can have multiple people. It's like there's a lot more. It's not everything that glitters is gold, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a way to protect yourself, because you're like, well, if I'm not fully invested, then he can't break my heart. If I don't say that I want marriage, if he never proposes, then I won't be disappointed. If I don't say I want kids, and he doesn't give them to me, well, then, I'm again, like, I'm shielding myself from these things. And you have to be able to say what you want, otherwise you're gonna die and have so many regrets. I'm like, I wish that I lived my life on my own terms, that I
Yeah.
demanded the love that I knew I was worthy of.
Yeah. And well, then there's the chapter 2, which is being worthy of the love. And there's a lot that we do that gets in the way of that. So it's not just that other people have deprived us of love. Having those walls up can create problems. So that's another thing is like trauma driven beliefs. about the sorts of people you're attracted to, or trauma-driven beliefs about relationships. And I just think that's a trauma-driven belief. Like I was talking to a young woman and she goes, well, I want my boyfriend to marry me. We've been together 10 years and
10 years?
they've been together 10 years and she would like to get married and he doesn't, or he probably doesn't. And he has some concerns, you know, he has his own side of the story, but she was the one talking to me. But she said, and I was trying to reassure him, it's just a piece of paper. What difference does it make? And I was like, I just don't agree with you. If you really think it's just a piece of paper, why does it matter? And she said, the wedding. I'm like, oh, where do I begin? That's just not going to fix you. You know,
Mhm.
the thing that you're wanting in your relationship will not be fixed by a piece of paper and a wedding.
Mhm.
And there's a lot to be had there. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess I guess when it comes right down to it, one of the things I do is I try to reinvigorate people's hope, like that longing you have for somebody who's really your person, who sticks with you through thick and thin. And if you get Alzheimer, they will be the person who's there for you. You know, somebody's going to
Mhm.
be there for you. Like that longing doesn't go away. And I think if you didn't get parented properly, kind of extra, it's going to be wonderful for you to have somebody who is really committed to you.
Mhm.
And so maybe it's not everybody's choice to do that, which is their choice. But if it's what your heart desires, it's got to be, you got to like make it okay and dignify that desire of yourself to have that. But then you have to start handling yourself like a person who's going there.
Mhm.
And that means not dating in that way that, you know, takes away from you, and not dating people who don't want you in that way. Like it actually, you have to just like draw the line on it. If you don't want to date people who aren't into you, don't date people who aren't into you. And to figure
Mhm.
out if they are, you have to let information come to you. They will show you through their actions on good days. And then as time progresses a little more, like if they really have that for you, or, you know, all of us, we might feel very dazzled by somebody, you know, for a week or something, and then it fades. But when you have those attachment wounds, it can hit you as if your parent just left you all over again. Like,
Mhm.
how could he do that? We were together a week. It was so great, but then he changed his mind. Um, and I'll often hear people who are like very unhealed yet saying, like, that's abuse. I'm like, no, no, it's dating. It's dating.
Mhm.
And it's your job to have the boundaries you need to be able to stay in that ambiguous state for a while, where you just are getting to know each other and finding out if you're into each other. And it
Mhm.
needs to be okay for people to go, yeah, you know what? I guess I'm not feeling it. That's like healthy.
Oh, yeah, to recognize
That's who
just
should leave.
incompatibility,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people take it wildly personal. It's like you have to understand not everyone's compatible, and you'll see it's a lot of guys too. Maybe it's just my feed, but these women that are doing these pre-breakup videos, which is kind of weird, but like
What? Tell me
it's
this.
so
What's
weird.
going on?
It's narcissism essentially. It's like digital narcissism, but it's these young women that will make a video and they'll start talking about how amazing their husband is or how amazing their boyfriend is, and they're like about to divorce or about to break up, and they're like, I don't get it. He's so good on paper, and then these men get really confused, and I understand why they get so angry, because they're like, well, if we're so good on paper, then why are you leaving us? And it's like, well, there's two different things happening that I see. And like, obviously, there's a million other more possibilities, but two main ones. One, if they're dating and this happens, it's just incompatibility, right? There's nothing wrong with you. Yes, you're a great guy, but if they're breaking up with you, like, there's no chemistry there. Like, I don't think that that automatically means that she has unrealistic standards or what, like, that
Right.
could be, that
Yeah.
very much could be. I'm not in that relationship, but there also is something to the magic of attraction. And we don't know what that secret sauce is, but there
Mhm.
is something like a gravitational force that makes you want to be with someone. So just because you are a great guy, that might not be there. And that's okay. Find someone
Uh-huh.
that's there. With the marriage element, the main thing that I see happening with these women, and again, there's a lot of other things that could be, this is just like the one that I see repeating, it's that a good man is not necessarily a good partner.
Mhm.
So he could be great on paper, everything on the outside could look perfect, and everyone's like, why are they divorcing? It's like, well, he might be a good man, he might be good at business, but he that doesn't translate into marriage, that doesn't translate into like how is he showing up for her, and that
Mhm.
might not be there. So again, like,
Mhm.
I have learned so much through like the last I don't know, year and a half of my life, and it's like not to jump to conclusions about other people's relationships.
Mhm.
you know? You
Yeah.
don't know what's on inside of them, and you don't know what's happening or not happening. And yes, something could look perfect. Someone can be perfect as a friend or perfect as a business partner, but you don't know what's happening within that relationship dynamic. So, um, yeah, I don't know.
But you described it as narcissism at the extreme end. So
Mhm.
is that like where somebody is like
Oh, well, like filming it? Yeah, I don't understand why
filming
you're
it? Yeah.
filming it. Yeah. That part makes me question maybe the
Yeah.
female that's making the video. But when you do see like relationships ending, I do think we need to take into account attraction. And we also need to take into account that like you don't know what's going on within the dynamics of the relationship. So
Yeah. 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 Well, also, if you learned everything about relationships from TV, I think you would find most relationships after a few years are not cutting the mustard. I mean, just think about that. We, my husband and I, we like when we watch TV together. I'm like, "Do you see that? Do you see how Jamie treats Claire?" And he's like,
that's
"You
such
know,
a great show. I love that show so
it's such a
much.
female fantasy.
Yeah.
He's always right there."
Yeah. He's always right there without a shirt.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
it's
yep.
perfect.
He knows all the tricks, and he's
Uh-huh.
and yeah, his loyalty is unfailing, and he never like misses a cue, and he always heard her perfectly, and he's like, "Oh no, you're watching Outlander again."
Oh my yeah,
You
but
know?
that's like one of those things that you can like add that, intrigue back into the relationship. It's
Yeah,
like it just like it requires more effort after a couple years, you know what I mean? And I
it
think
does.
it's like
I've told
it's
him before.
yeah, yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
"I just don't know what women want." I'm like, "Just watch Outlander."
What they
Yeah,
say this these men will be like, "There's I wish there was a manual." There is. There are
there is.
so many.
Yeah,
Find out what she's reading, find out what she's watching. Read
yeah,
and watch that, and it is like a play by play, my friend.
yeah, yeah,
You get to a peek into her psyche, and now you guys get to have some fun and reconnect and feel like you're, at the beginning of dating again, which is awesome.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think there's like this really bad piece of advice, or like it's like being told is just a matter of fact when it comes to marriage or relationships. It's like at some point it just dies, right? You just got to be okay with it being dead. And it's like absolutely not.
no,
Absolutely not. Like it requires different things to revive it or to like feel like those butterflies or whatever it is, but I want to be 85 and have my man smack me on the butt while he passes me in the kitchen. Like I never want that to stop. And I
yeah.
don't think that I don't know. I don't agree with that. I think that that's just laziness and people kind of accepting complacency within a relationship. Like there's a million ways.
Yeah, or maybe trying to justify the end, but I've been with my husband for 17 years, married for 12 or something. I can't even remember. Yeah, about that. And it's the longest I've ever been in a relationship. And I call it the rubber band because I think we especially have a dynamic where we sort of come together, then we go into our little corners, and we come together and we pull apart. And there's this like way that it's okay that that's how we kind of roll. That's how we roll. But I call it the rubber band because even if we have a really hard argument, that's like hard where you're thinking, I don't know, maybe it's not going to work out. There's like a rubber band. It just kind of comes back together. There's an element there that's not, it's not physical attraction dependent. It's just a soul bond. It's just
Mhm.
no, we're together. We just come back together and it works every time. God
Mhm.
forbid it ever fails, but it's very strong, and I've never had that in my life. And I think that that's luckily I got to discover it because I dated him for 5 years before we got married, and we were 3 years before we got engaged, and then it was a slow engagement because of anything that was bumpy, we just didn't push it fast.
Mhm.
And that helped me a lot. That helped me a lot.
Yeah, that seems like I mean, yeah, that seems like a long time to me. I was like, I don't know if I
Yeah.
would like 5 years in, I'd be like, "What are we doing?"
Well, maybe you're just not as much of a screw up in relationships as I was.
I don't know. TBD on that one.
I wouldn't require it of anybody. It's a lot, but like we were both divorced people, and I
Mhm.
had kids, and
Mhm.
it's actually a very serious thing, especially for him. Like, let's think about this a second, because I would sometimes feel impatient about it. Like, my kids are great, you love them, let's just get married, and he'd be like,
Mhm.
I like you do not want to mess around with that decision. You want somebody who really brings their whole self committed to that marriage,
Mhm.
for something like that. And so even though it kind of bugged me that he was dragging his feet there towards the end, I am so glad that he didn't do it until he knew, and
Oh,
that I
yeah.
can count on that. Because the way that I've been let down in relationships all my freaking life, like I just, it's bad enough like it is. The way that I will sort of have a startle reaction about stuff. You know, I always think, oh my god, I'm about to get left, and I'm
Mhm.
finally, have the room to get over that. But
See,
that's like,
mine's the opposite. So mine's not like fear of being left. Mine's like the one pushing away.
oh
Like
yeah,
that, that tends
well,
to be
we all
my
do that, Candice, don't we? No.
like when I'm stressed, I'm like, okay, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah,
These are 1,000 reasons why. The
yeah,
sky is falling. And luckily, like the man I'm with is just like a rock. Like he'll be like, okay, we're gonna calm down, we're take some
yeah.
breaths.
Yeah. But it sounds like you get to have a rubber band. You get to like
Oh
stretch
yeah,
away
yeah.
sometimes. Like that's like sometimes a gal just really needs to stretch away. You kind of just need to feel yourself like not dependent for a day, just away, just to kind of feel yourself and then come back all naturally, and not like, oh, I'm stuck. It's not stuck. You
Mhm.
you get to feel yourself pulling away, and you get to feel the desire to come back if it's there. Yeah.
So, how do you recognize any self sabotaging behavior? Because some of that is really sneaky, right?
Yeah.
For me, I have to like really sit and be like, is this voice a like intuition or is this an intrusive thought? Like, which one is it? And sometimes it is indistinguishable.
It is. I know. That's why I write and meditate every day, twice a day, because it's not really a quick fix for me to straighten out my thoughts like that. My perception was so damaged, from just all the crazy ways that I had to cope growing up, all the ways that I gaslit myself about stuff.
Hmm.
And so I had to, I have a lot to learn. And so you don't know, but it's gotten a lot easier for me now. I feel like what's underrated is the process of self-reflection and figuring out when you do know that you've made a mistake or you've done something hurtful, you have to get right on it and
Hmm.
not try to justify it or blame the other person for it. You just have to get right on it. It's helped me so much. It's helped me to like get my dignity back and hold my head up to be like, I'm sorry. I really lashed out at you there. That wasn't fair. It wasn't even about you. I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me. That would really scare me if you talk to me like that. And if in my old me, I would have been, well, I'm sorry, but you were kind of like acting like we were going to have to cancel all of our plans. And how many times have you done that? And I feel like you don't care about me. It was like this whole like tangle of problems. And if you try to approach somebody to solve an interpersonal problem with a tangle of problems, they can't really help you. And then if there's like layer upon layer of just like old stuff from your childhood, it's like, no one ever loves me. I'm the girl who always gets left behind. Like they can't really respond to that either. They can't fix it. And when I look back at my younger relationships, I can see how I was always like, I feel really freaked out. You're here. You're right in front of me. You must have done this to me. Fix it. And that's just a losing proposition. And even people who tried or wanted to or did their best, like it couldn't fix me. It wouldn't hit the spot because it wasn't coming from them. And
Hmm.
so people do hurt each other. It is sometimes coming from the other person. But I had so many layers of it there. I didn't know what was really happening. And I would call it parentify people that I was dating and
Hmm.
think that I had a right to get my needs met by them. But I don't think that's strictly true. You could say, oh yes, in a marriage, blah, blah, blah. But I just mean like when you're dating somebody, their job isn't to meet your needs. Their job is to get to know you. Your job is to get to know them. And that's like jumping in within a month. And it's very easy to do that when you have attachment wounds and you've already had sex a bunch of times and it's very exciting and bonding and you have the illusion that you're bonded. And then it's like, oh, they just want to go do something else this weekend. And they didn't really tell you in advance. It'll feel like this grand betrayal.
Mm.
And then the way that we act around that feeling doesn't look good to them, doesn't look like safe relationship material. So it's self-sabotage. A lot of how I've ever learned that I was doing self-sabotaging behavior is I would see it in other people's eyes. Because
Mm.
when I'm being self-sabotaging, I'm so checked out, I'm so dysregulated, I can't really feel the truth of things. I'm sort of high on this narrative I'm on, like, you wronged me, it's all your fault, it's not my fault. And it's like this very strong, compelling vision. So whenever I have black and white thinking, it's a red flag. if I can see in other people's eyes that they look a little alarmed at what I'm saying, it's a red flag for me to stop. And so I teach people a very like practical method. Like if there's any sign at all that you're dysregulated, don't try to make major decisions. Don't try to solve heavy problems. If it feels urgent to solve the problem, unless abuse is happening or somebody's on fire, it's not urgent. You have to override the desire to like, we have to talk about this right now. We have to leave the movie and go stand outside and talk about this. No, that's wrong thinking. That's trauma driven thinking. And so the best time to talk about something is after you've sort of like processed stuff. Like for me, like writing and meditating, that's like 80% of it will get released from that. And then what's left is something I can usually articulate and say, what was really bothering me was this. And I can wait till a better time to talk about it when there's time to have their full attention and we're in private and things like that. And just learn like there are like practical, normal, healthy things that you can do to deal with conflict and upsets that help you get through it with the relationship intact and
Mhm.
not damaged because you felt hurt. And that is like such a trauma, people who were neglected and abused as kids, like everybody knows what I'm talking about when you just bring too much emotion to the thing and it hurts the other person. And then there's that much distance between you. And there's only so many times you can do that and still recover from it. It's very sad.
Yeah, you nailed that. I feel like a lot of people don't realize your actions and your words, like, while they can be forgiven, they're still logged,
Yeah.
and there is only so much you can do before that potentially breaks the relationship. Even like the most well-meaning, most effort, there could be so much love, but I think there's only so much damage that can be done before like
Hmm.
you erode the trust or you erode the connection or the bond or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um for me, we talk a lot about love languages, but I think one of the more important ones is like the way that you argue.
Mm.
And like, how do you guys approach conflict? How do you resolve conflict? Um, it will say a lot about the potential of the longevity of that relationship and
Yeah.
also like how deep that connection can be. Like, does the person like the thing that like Dan always says is like if we're having anything come up, like it's not an argument, like we're on the same team, so it's a problem that we're both having, and then how do we solve that problem? And like that kind of framing is very new to me, where there's like not competition within the relationship and it's not adversarial. It's like, oh no, we're like a unit, so like how do we approach this problem?
Yeah.
Or if I'm spiraling, he like so like it's crazy how fast he can like see things and he'll be like, actually this is what you're doing, like you're using this as like a way to create distance, right? Or like
There it
because
is.
like you don't feel lovable or you don't feel worthy. And I'm like, oh my God. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like you I do think that before you like jump into like a really a serious relationship, like whether like you're talking about marriage or kids or whatever, you have to be able to go through stuff. Like you have to like what you were saying about like the airport or the dog tangling you or
Yeah.
any like you have to go through that. Otherwise you're not seeing the whole person, you're not seeing
Right.
the whole dynamic between the two of you. But yeah, I think the way that you argue and or the way that you approach conflict is wildly important and it's telling.
Yeah. Yeah. Creating distance. That's, I mean, you just said that's the thing. Like when that's really what people are doing. And so much conflict is an effort to create distance.
Mm,
Because it feels so terrifying and like it feels like an existential threat to have a conflict with somebody. And so a lot of what we produce is an attempt to create distance. That's kind of what I've been diving into in this past year in the creation of this book is the hidden ways that we isolate. It's hidden even from ourselves, but we're trying to manage the stress of other
mhm,
people. As much as you love somebody and you want them there would be hidden ways that you push them away and you keep them at a certain distance where you're not getting overwhelmed, you're not getting freaked out. But
mhm.
really the way towards the intimacy that you want, because that's not, if you're feeling like it's not close enough, the way to it is to expand your capacity to handle the things that have been stressful for you.
I love
And
that you just used that word. Expanding the capacity
the
is
capacity.
huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge, and not enough people talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's only so far you can go being like, these are my boundaries. I don't put up with this. That's just going to keep you separate. and there's a time to be separate, but if you want to come together, you have to have an expanded capacity and a higher tolerance for the it's just people are triggers. People are triggering.
Mhm.
That's the deal. Romantic relationships are triggering, friends are triggering, groups are triggering, neighbors are triggering. And so the more you have people triggers, the more you're going to find yourself unconsciously holding yourself apart, even when you participate. And so what that looks like is like, I'm too busy. I'm too tired. I'm looking at
Mhm.
my phone all the time. I'm just kind of holding myself apart. I'm checking out so that I can re-regulate. If you can actually learn to re-regulate yourself and just put a little bit more into that proactively, then your capacity can open and you don't have to look at your phone through dinner to cope with, whatever's uncomfortable about dinner.
Mhm.
And you don't have to have a fight when a fight isn't really the way, it's not necessary to have a fight. And you don't have to cancel plans all the time or be tired or busy every day.
Mhm.
That's one thing my family has come after me for. Like I work a lot. Like having a business like mine is a lot of work, but I am the boss. So if I'm sitting there complaining that the boss is making me work too much, I have to have a talk with myself. And that at a certain point working, if I work and stress out about work a certain amount, people can't really reach me and they don't like it and it causes me to be lonely.
Mhm.
And and I finally put two and two together.
Mhm. Mhm.
That if you
Yeah.
want good relationships with people, there has to be some time available to give them your full attention.
Oh, yeah, you have to invest
Yeah.
in things if you wanna see any kind of return.
Yeah.
That's across the board, and I
Yeah.
yeah, I think the wanting to be alone element is probably very common for a lot of people that experienced, severe childhood trauma because
Yeah.
essentially what it's saying is if I have a need, my need was never, validated or met, and I had to be left alone to figure it out. So what that shows up in adulthood is I have to be alone to figure it out. So the way that I've kind of like grown myself and like constantly trying to like be a better version and not let my past define me is recognizing patterns. So it's like if I
Mhm.
can tie this back to something in childhood or if I notice like I've done this in other relationships or this thing has happened for the fourth or fifth time, then that's something to look at and to very quickly change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of where I look at self-sabotaging behavior versus intuition. I'm like, okay, has this happened again? Has this happened with multiple people? Like, is there a common theme with this thing? And if so, that's probably a me thing. Like, I need to fix it. If it's new, if it's new, if it whispers, like all these other nuances, then I would say intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Anna, this was great. I don't want to take all of your time, but before we wrap up, do you want to like tell people how they can support you, where they can buy
Yeah.
your both of your books,
Yeah.
any upcoming projects, all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, the book that's been the book that came out last year is Reregulated. And I got to say I love this book and it's been very popular with people and people are doing it in book clubs and doctors and therapists are picking it up and people are sharing it with their families. And I'm so proud of that book. That summarizes my perspective, my countercultural perspective on how to get re-regulated and why it's almost impossible to heal until you do. And then Connectability is this year's book, and I'm so proud of this one. This is about the hidden ways heal, the hidden ways you isolate, find your people, and feel at last like you belong. And so this one's not focused on romantic relationships; it's on all relationships. And I walk people through how to include, there's the baseline of, look, dysregulation is going on and it makes everything hard. First you start working on that, and then there's like very common obstacles that people have that have to do with avoidant patterns, filling up your life with mean and troubled people, which makes it impossible to have good relationships with people who can connect with you, having just kind of not really believing that anybody could like you. It's like you start, we've all been that girl, and we know people like this, where you're projecting this unworthiness that makes it impossible to connect. You learn to set boundaries, and and you learn to get the focus at a healthy dial onto yourself, not so completely focused on others, not entirely on yourself, not entirely on others. But and then I teach really like practical stuff. It's like charm school, learning like how to be a good conversationalist. And there's really common ways that when we talk to other people, we can sort of shut down the connection. And if you've been isolated for a long time, you probably have some of these habits. And so I just kind of walk you through, here's what it looks like, here's how to stop doing it. And then I make it a points game where you practice every day to start trying to connect a little more, not all at once. If you've been isolated, all at once is just going to tip you over, but a little at a time, just keep practicing your muscle to connect with people. Shed the people who don't belong in your life, cultivate the people who do, and start like having a full life. Alas, but everybody wants that. Everybody would like to have the good people around to enjoy life with. So that's what that book's about. You can come to my YouTube channel, Crappy Childhood Fairy. All kinds of things going on there. I've been talking all month about female bullying and aggression and stuff. And boy, that's been lighting people up. A lot of people have been experiencing that.
Oh my gosh, I wish I knew that earlier. I just had a clip that I posted on that, and it was specifically talking about how awful women are to one another.
Oh God.
And ironically, I had another woman come into the comment section and start to criticize me
Oh
and
yeah.
blame me and shame me. And she's like, "How dare you say women are mean to other women?
I
Men are
know.
killing women." And I was like, "Do you see what you're doing right now? Is
Do
this
you see what you're
completely
doing?
lost on
I
you?"
know. I
Right?
know.
Like, someone zoom in. Like, is there a it was nonsense. But yeah, I'm glad you
There,
made that
there
video
was a
'cause it's
little of
very
that,
real.
but there was unbelievable. There's been like 4,000 comments or something. I mean, they just, I can't remember the number, but like such a high number of comments of going, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking about this. I had this too. And in it,
Mhm.
I'm not really teaching. I tell a true story of a neighborhood that ganged up on me. It was awful. And I was
Mhm.
stuck there for so long. And I gave up a house that would be worth a lot of money right now just to get out of there finally. I just couldn't
Yeah.
take it anymore and I don't regret it. But but I used to work for an organization that was mostly women and everybody would go, that must be amazing. And I'd be like, people are people.
Yeah.
Or that fantasy. If the world were run by women, I'm like, watch out what you
Spare
wish
me.
for.
Yeah,
We need all
spare me.
kinds of people. Trust me on this one.
Mhm.
We do.
Yes.
So yeah, and then on my website, Crappy Childhood Fairy, you can find the courses, the webinars, the live workshops. I'm leading a bunch of retreats in the coming year on healing dysregulation, but also limerence. I've got a workshop coming up in April for women about healing limerence, the addiction level obsession with somebody who you can't have, and it's my pleasure to teach that. To finally be on the teaching end of that one.
Mhm.
And I really I love when I get to connect with people on calls and especially in person. It's lovely. I just did a couple of workshops in Europe this month, and it was great fun. It's good
Very
trauma.
cool.
Trauma, fun, right?
Yeah. I mean, turning like, your trauma and your past into, like, a gift and a tool for other people,
Yeah,
it's a
and
beautiful
connecting with
thing.
other people who get it. It's just like the
Yeah.
deepest happiness there is. Like,
Mhm.
we're normal. There's nothing wrong with us. We have normal wounds and we can heal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing stuff. I will link all that below for all of the
Thank
listeners.
you.
This was awesome as usual. Hopefully, you'll be back before another year, or
Oh
maybe you'll have
yeah,
like a third book,
anytime.
a third book in the next few
Anytime.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Candice.
Bye, everybody.